Hello, Yella here. Uh, I haven't made a video in quite some time. My life has been a little bit busy, but in preparation for the 10900K, I need to do some comparison for the 9900K. And since I got a capture card now, I figured why not just go through the BIOS here of the Maximus 11 Apex. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm actually at the main screen here. When you open up the BIOS, I think Extreme Tweaker is what you get into to begin with. But or actually you might get into this screen right here, which is the easy mode. But I don't really like to use easy mode. It's very easy to just activate your XMP right here. So your memory runs at the speed that they actually should. But I don't really like this interface, so I usually just press F7 to get this. And well, let's go through the BIOS here. First we have my favorites. I actually haven't set anything in here. I think it just... I don't know if this is preset or something, but I know that you can change this. I have no idea how. I never use this tab. In main, we just get some basic information. This system is running, of course, the 9900K, and we're also running some Crucial Ballistics 3600 RAM on here, and of course the RTX 2070, but that's not really important for this. You can see, actually, if you look under CPU memory, you will see the temperature is -6 degrees. I do have my single stage phase changer on here. It's about -40 degrees right now. But the board doesn't really... The temperature on the CPU actually doesn't go below -6. Sometimes it says -8. I don't know if it... it can't really make up its mind sometimes. But that's why you see that weird number. I believe that this is actually a retail chip. I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't say engineering sample in here, so it should be. I don't remember. I usually just receive these CPUs in trays. So anyway, Extreme Tweaker is where you want to basically change everything regarding overclocking. I think that's pretty obvious. Right now, I'm just running a basic overclock, but let's just go through it here. What you want to do to begin with is just activate the XMP. This one has two profiles. I don't understand, because both of them are actually the same settings, so it makes no sense. But when you actually choose XMP, there will come a pop-up asking if you want to enable some, I think it's this multi-core enhancements or something, and that will run the CPU at 5 GHz at all times, I believe. It's the maximum turbo frequency. So if you just want to run 5 GHz and don't think about anything, I believe that you can just do that. Especially on the 9900K. I cannot speak for other CPUs. It depends on the max turbo of whatever CPU that you have. But this applies to basically any CPU. Even if you don't have a K-SKU, the CPU should run at maximum frequency. I don't actually know if you can run this high memory speeds on non-K-SKUs. I don't think that you can. But yeah. So... enabling XMP, and of course I removed all the limits because I'm overclocking right now. I don't know why under CPU it says frequency 3.6 GHz, because I set it to 5.4. Okay, whatever. It also says target frequency 5.4 at the top. Anyway, let's move on a little bit. SVID, I usually just set it to the best case scenario. It's, yeah, it says right there what it is. That's the neat thing about ASUS boards. They tell you basically what all the functions are. I don't need any offset. If you're running AVX loads, they are very hard on the CPU. So maybe you want to offset the multiplier by 1 or 2 when you're running AVX. I have never really used this, to be honest. Setting the core clock is very basic. You can synchronize all the cores, or you can set it per core if you want. AI optimized, I have no idea. I think it's about the prediction over at the right, where it says that, well, the cooler gets some points. I think 250 is the max. And it sort of, it tries to understand the performance of your cooler and give you an idea of what the max stable clocks might be. But I have never used it. I usually just sync all cores and, yeah, go high. So this one I never fiddle with. There's no reason to lock yourself into some memory frequencies. So this will just be on auto depending on your memory frequency. This will be set on its own. Odd, yeah, of course. We get more we get more RAM options in here, like RAM speed options. This memory kit cannot post anything above 4000 megahertz. It doesn't matter how much voltage I shove through them. They simply don't care. System will just not boot up with random postcode errors every time. I enable extreme tweaking. It's gonna help with some benchmark performance. If you are trying to overclock your system, I don't think this... Well, you can activate it. I don't think it does anything for stability, but it might do something to your performance in non-benchmarks. So, yeah. This, so you... Generally, I don't need to have the CPU communicating with the voltage regulator. But if you're running daily, you might want to have that on, just to make sure that, you know, nothing funky is going on there. So we have actually full control over all the timings, or well, basically all of them in here, for the memory, of course. This memory is running CL15 at 4000 megahertz. That's... I can run CL13, but the stability is kind of messy. Some benchmarks will pass, some will not. This is for full stability, because when I do write my articles and stuff, I want to make sure that it's fully stable. There's no need to have a half stable system, and then, you know, you can pass all the benchmarks, but you can't really use it for anything, you know, real gaming wise or production or whatever. There's no need to have any instability. This should be as real world as it gets. I know that I'm using a pretty strong cooler, but yeah, I don't really have any other cooler that fits on this system right now. So yeah, that's that. Anyway, I think this kit, the RAM kit, is actually Micron Rev E, but I am not entirely sure, because these timings, like, I can push this to 34 and I don't really get any instability, but it won't go further down, so I upped it a little bit. And 18 here, RAS to CAS, that's also, yeah. 16 is a complete no-go, so I just put it on 18. I know this is stable. You're not going to run 1T on command rate. I don't know why ASUS writes it as 1N. I have no idea, but 2N or 2T works very fine. This one right here, this is extremely high for my taste. Like, I would see these go as low as 360 or something on B-die, maybe even lower, like 300 on really good B-die sticks. So I don't know what's up here. I'm not entirely sure that this is actually Rev E anyway, but yeah. This is just for reviewing, so it doesn't really matter if they're extremely good, but I still want to be able to differentiate the different motherboards, how well they overclock the RAM and stuff. And this kit, it goes to 4000 megahertz, so I think some boards might be able to push it further than others still. We're in the territory of that, so that's fine. I'm not really gonna bother with all of these sub-timings, secondary and tertiary timings here, but these are not very good in my opinion. Maybe they can do better. I actually haven't tested a bunch of these, so yeah. But if you're running daily and you have 3600 memory, I don't know if you're gonna get anything out of actually having faster memory than that, but if you do, then this is where you set your timings. Of course, you set the RAM speed in here. External Jiki Plus. Yeah, that's a weird name. Load line calibration. In general, if you're overclocking for daily, you don't really need to change much in here. I would not recommend you changing the frequency of the VRMs. It does give some stability. It helps with transient response. But if you're at that level and running daily, and you actually need that for stability, you're running very much on the edge. So yeah, if you want to do it, sure, but you might not be stable for the next 5 years. You might see some things that are unstable. Also, this is going to heat up the VRMs, but on this board, it's not really that big of a problem. Current capability is always nice to have, so you don't really have any limit. Well, 140% limit, but you're not really going to hit that. So you're very much covered in there. Let's go the load line calibration. Actually, I haven't tested a whole lot on this motherboard, which is why I'm going with level 5. I would recommend just leaving this on auto if you're trying to daily overclock. But if you're at a point where it's almost stable, then you can try to play around with these if you don't want to raise VCore anymore. VCore is what gives you heat, and if your cooler is kind of maxed out, you're running 80, 90 degrees at full load maybe, this might be worth giving a try, along with upping the frequency of the VRMs. But yeah, just leave them on auto if you really just want to run daily. Yeah, these it should not be necessary, and this I just up for no reason at all, because this is just a limit for how hot the CPU can get. You really should not up this, because if your CPU gets more than 115 degrees, you probably want that system to shut down. You don't want it to shut down at 141 degrees. This is simply just to give me more upper limits. That's what I care about. Thermal control, I just leave this on auto. You can disable the thermal control, but I don't see a reason for it. This VRM is never going to get hot enough, especially not when I'm running minus degrees. That cold is going to spread across the CPU socket and the motherboard, so you will get good thermals as well. DRAM, of course, I up the frequency and stuff, just playing around with it, but I would not recommend doing this on a daily system. If you're just pushing for maximum clocks, sure, go for it. Boot voltages, this is mainly for liquid nitrogen overclocking, I would say. So you can boot up at specific voltages. Let's say your memory will only train at 1.6 or 1.7 volts. But you actually need more volts for stability in Windows. So then you can boot up with a specific voltage, and then after you have actually posted, the voltages will change to whatever you need them to be to get the stable one. But that's not, like, if you need that on a daily system, you're also running kind of on the edge of stability, I'd say. So yeah, that's why I don't recommend using these on daily systems either. So this is also where we can change anything regarding power management of the CPU. ASUS, kind of acts a little bit weird here, because when you set a actually, let's go when you set up here this one, what the multi-core enhancement, when you set remove all limits, I do believe that this is actually what makes the CPU run at full turbo all the time. So the way it works on Intel is that when you're overclocking, you're actually doing on the turbo frequency. You're not upping the base frequency or anything in the middle. You're just upping the maximum turbo, basically. So right here, with this setting right here, you will run full turbo at all times. So of course you will get the 5.4 at all times. So you don't really have any power saving anymore. So you're going to be run horribly not unstable, sorry. You're going to be running very much inefficient. And I think that I'm drawing like 70, 80 watts idle, whereas if this up here is disabled and you're just running stock, you will get 30, maybe less watt on idle. So you're going to give up some efficiency, power efficiency by doing that, but I don't care about it. Maybe you do, so maybe you should not have this one up here enabled. It will still, if you don't enable this and then you put 5.4 here, it will still clock up to 5.4 when you're using all cores. It's gonna figure that out. So that's for you to play around with. I don't really play around with it because I don't like. I have this maximum power thing that I always want. Let's see here. Trigger's Paradise. I don't really use a whole lot of these. Yeah, sure, you have a bunch of voltages. I don't know enough to actually change any of these. I haven't played around with it just yet. I haven't actually played a whole lot around with the 9900K platform at all. I haven't had the time, sadly. So this, yeah, just leave it on auto, especially if you're dailying. You really don't need this. AI features. So you can recalibrate the cooler here. So that's the prediction, the points of the cooler that we see at the right here. When you recalibrate it, it's gonna figure out, start from 0 and try again to see how good your cooler is. You're probably gonna end up with the same. So if you change your cooler and you want to see different numbers under the prediction, sure, but I don't really care about it. Yeah, so you can set a bunch of things in here. Just yeah, I actually haven't used these. I don't really know. I don't want to do that. I actually have never used these, so I don't exactly know. But I think this is just for the prediction, to be honest. And then you set your settings for what it says under the prediction. So let's move down to, what do we have here? The cache. I didn't set a current limit for the cache, apparently. I usually, 255. That's the maximum. So that lets you draw maximum power on the cache of the CPU. So I think it was it 6th or 7th gen? I think it was before that, actually, where they changed it so that the core frequency is not running the same as the cache frequency. Or I should say the other way around. The cache frequency is not running the same as the core frequency. So that means you can push the core frequency a little bit higher, and then you don't really need to push the cache frequency, because usually that's the one that gives up first. So here I'm running 5 gigahertz on it. Maybe it can do more. I haven't really tested it, but I do believe that 5 gigahertz is kind of enough, and I don't want to bother with testing over and over and over just to make sure. Yeah, ring down. I never use this. Yeah, you can read what it says right there and what it does. I'm not gonna bother with it. Down here, I usually set voltage to manual because I want to keep a constant voltage. You can do an offset mode, so that's if the CPU goes down to idle, for example, then you will always have this offset of like 0.5 volts. That might be a bit high. Let's say 0.25 volts. And this will scale up to loading voltage as well. So that might be a way to keep your efficiency when you're overclocking. I like to keep a constant voltage just because I also like to have maximum turbo frequency running all the time. DRAM voltage with this kit, I actually lose stability over 1.6 volts. I have tried 1.65 and it seems like this kit is more stable with 1.6. But like as always, your mileage may vary in this case. For daily though, I wouldn't recommend running above 1.55 voltage on your memory. Maybe just go down to 1.5 just to be absolutely sure. VCC-IO is the voltage for the memory controller, so I don't really recommend going above 1.2, 1.25 if you really want to push it. But this degrades the memory controller really quickly if you go above that. For liquid nitrogen, we don't really care, but if you're running daily, you really don't want to go higher. And this is only if your RAM can run the speed, but your CPU might be having trouble running the speeds that you want to run, then you can up this voltage. Usually you should set it to something 1.15 and go from there, because if you do activate XMP, some motherboards, if not all, they will set a ridiculously high VCC-IO and VCC-SA, well, system agent voltage, what it says right here. These two voltages, I have seen some boards setting ridiculously high, like 1.5 volts or something like that, and then after a year, I have had people coming asking me, well, my system is not stable anymore, and when I reset the BIOS, it is. Why can't I run it with XMP on? Well, your memory controller degraded quite hard, and now you can't run those speeds anymore. Either you need to up the voltage, which is just degrading it even further, or you need to run slower speeds, basically. That's kind of a rabbit hole to go into, to just keep upping the voltage. I really don't recommend that. I always set them just to keep them under control, to make absolutely sure. Yeah, let's move on. PLL termination. I haven't seen anything different from raising this or lowering it. I remember back in the day lowering the PLL voltage might help, especially just on heat output. So if you could get the heat output down of the CPU, you could cool it a little bit more when it was on full load. So this is for that. I haven't tested. Well, I did test it a little bit, but I haven't really seen any gains from lowering it or upping it in terms of either stability or temperature. So I don't know what's going on there. Maybe some chips do and others don't. I don't know. PCH core is the chipset. Generally, I don't think changing that needs any reason. Because we're not overclocking the chipset. There's no need for that. If anything, if you raise this voltage, the chipset is just going to get hotter, and you might have some cooling issues depending on the motherboard. This one has a pretty good cooler, but like, why would I? CPU standby. Yeah, so I don't really change this. I haven't tested this. Maybe I should. And DRAM ref voltage. So we have a bunch of voltages in here, and I haven't really tested these. I think what you can set voltages on the different ranks on each DIMM that you have of memory. So some memory are single rank, dual rank. Some of them are quad rank. Here you can actually change for each block as well. So maybe you have one block that's not as good as the other and needs a little bit more voltage or a little bit less voltage. Then you can set them in here. But yeah, I have never ever used this. If you're doing that, then you're absolutely hardcore overclocking, and I haven't been there with this platform. So Hopefully, I will soon in the next month. At the beginning of next month, I'm going to be streaming some overclocking on liquid nitrogen. I have some coming on either the 3rd or the 4th next month. So that's gonna be interesting. I might play around with it just off camera and stuff. Just try to see if it actually does anything with the memory that I have. I do have a 4133 kit from G-Skill. That's a B-Dice kit. It's actually pretty good, but I do think that one of my friends that are gonna come here to overclock with me. We're going to be 4 people. One of them has a Galax kit that's a little bit better. So I don't know which one we're actually gonna go with. Anyway. Let's go into advanced. I actually don't change a whole lot in here. Like, I care about this tab and not so much about the others. Yeah, you can disable and enable a bunch of onboard stuff in here. If you don't need the SATA controllers, for example, sure, you can disable these. You can change the power management of the PCI Express ports. So Windows will actually clock down your PCI Express ports to save power. So that's what you can enable and disable here. CPU configuration, so you can see what's supported on the 9900K. We kind of know that. So you can enable and disable a bunch of features here. You can enable less cores if you just want to run for like high frequency. Sometimes you run it as a dual core or something like that. Hyper-threading on off, power management. This is kind of all set by ASUS when you choose to run the CPU at full turbo all the time. So you don't really need to change anything in here. Some motherboards requires you to disable C states, which are the power management. So that's the thing that lets your CPU clock down to like 800 megahertz when it's not doing anything. Yeah, that's all that we have in here. System agent, yeah, sure, we can. Yeah, we want memory above 4 GB, right? Yeah, so why disable that? It's nice to have the option. I really like the options if you need them, but I don't know what you would need them for. The PCI speed you can change here. So this is for the chipset. There's somewhere where you can change the PCI Express speed for the. Hold on, what happened here? Go back. Okay, so you can change the PCI Express gen speeds somewhere in here. I think this might be it. No. There is one place where you can do it, and it does. Sometimes the PCI Express speed can actually bug out. So sometimes you might be needing to run Gen 2 for specific speeds if you're really pushing it on the CPU frequency. Maybe that helps. I have seen other issues with graphics card overclocking where you could go higher core frequencies and stuff like that when you change the PCIe version, and especially on AMD, I think you want to change it down to Gen 2 or even Gen 1 when you're doing 2D overclocking. For daily, you shouldn't need to do that. Storage, we can change. Yeah, we can enable, disable SATA ports if we want to, and change it if you want to run RAID. Stuff like that. Yeah, PPT. I actually don't know what this is. I am never in here, so but that's there. Onboard devices, you can disable the LAN if you want. You can disable the audio. I don't know why you would want to do that. Maybe sometimes disabling a bunch of onboard settings here, like disabling a lot of these, might help with overclocking on the CPU because it has less to handle. Basically, I do think that. Oh, here we have it. That's the bandwidth. On the third PCI Express. I think that's actually on the chipset. Anyway, So disabling these will have Windows less. Will give Windows less to care about, right? Because then you have no audio, for example. You don't need a driver or anything for that, so that doesn't need to run. You can gain a little bit of points from that. I usually don't bother with it because the points gain are like 0.0001% or something. But if you're really trying to break world records, maybe this would be an option. Yeah, so you can change front USB Type-C power mode. What? You can only auto or enabled? I don't know. Yeah. Disable Wi-Fi, that might be a good idea, so you don't have that interference. This is some power kind of thing. RTC, I think you can power it on by what, clock? Yeah, so you can set what time the system should wake up and stuff like that. That's pretty neat to have. Or you can power it on by PCIe LAN cards, so you can have power on LAN by add-in PCIe cards. And what happens if you have a power failure? The system remains off. ERP ready? No, I don't want the power saving. I don't know if this is actually a default setting or if the board changes it for you or something when you run full turbo. And this we were in. I have no idea. So, yeah, it says at the bottom what it is, but sure. USB configuration, USB port disable. We can enable and disable specific USB ports on here. Why would you want to do that? I don't know. Yeah. Network stack. So network stack is when you have two LAN ports on your motherboard. This board, I believe, has one. Yeah, I'm looking at it. It only has one. But maybe it can stack with an add-in PCIe card, so you can have like 1 gigabit line and then another gigabit line, and then you can mix them together, and then voila, you have one single 2 gigabit line. Of course, it's not really gonna help you a whole bunch if what you're connecting to doesn't have it in your LAN. So I haven't heard a lot of people using it. If you use this system as a NAS or something, it might be worth doing, because you can have like 5 different computers connecting to this at once, and then you have like 5 gigabit going in but only 2 out and stuff. Then you might want to add more cards if you need more LAN speed. NVMe, yeah, I have no NVMe devices in here. I use a SATA SSD. I think it's the 840 Samsung one. It's an older one, but I don't need the speeds. Yeah, here we go. It's an 840 Pro. So yeah, this is pretty neat. You can just see very, very basic smart info, how long it has been turned on and stuff like that, but you only see the raw info. If you want to see better info, just get Crystal Disk info or something on Windows. Monitor, we can see the temperature of the different things here, like the CPU, the motherboard. The motherboard temperature is actually the VRM, I believe. It might be different for different boards, but I'm pretty sure that most of them, the motherboard temperature is actually the VRM temperature. PCH is the chipset, and you can add in a temperature sensor on this board, and you can see that here. If your RAM supports temperature reading, you can see them here. Water in, so there's 2 temperature sensors on this board for water cooling. If you want to use it like that, like this is what they're named, but you can use them for anything basically. I ignore the CPU fan speed because I have no fan there, and the BIOS will complain that you're running 0 RPM. So I'm ignoring these. It's going to be NA, just like the chassis fan speed. Yeah, I have no fans on here because I'm using the single stage cooler. You can see the different voltages. Don't like take these voltages with a grain of salt. These are never actually entirely correct. Maybe Maybe the V-core is kind of correct, but not down to the like 1.341. I would say we might be running 1.33 or 1.35. I think I set it to 1.35 actually. So don't rely on this too much, but it can still give you like a pointer. By the way, 1.35, if you can cool it, that should be just fine on the 9th gen on daily systems. But of course, the lower the voltages, the less heat you're gonna output, and the easier it's going to be to cool. And there is a point where your CPU might get so hot that it gets unstable, and actually lowering the voltage might make it stable. So that's that as well. 3.3 voltage, I don't really believe this. I think this power supply should be rock stable at 3.3. It's a Silverstone 1500 watt something. 5 voltage should be 5 voltage as well. I don't believe this, and I definitely don't believe the 12 voltage line. I think this might be 12.11 or something. I don't remember what it got measured out to. It's a long time since I measured it. So Q fan, we can, yeah, in here we can change the fan speeds and how the fans behave depending on temperature or whatever you want. I don't use that. Disable it. Whatever. Temperature LED switch. Okay, so the CPU LED. It's probably on the boot LEDs. So this board has 4 LEDs when it's booting. The first one is CPU, then RAM, then VGA, then boot. So this will probably light up the CPU LED on that when the temperature gets too high. That's like who looks in their case for this, but yeah, sure. Boot. So some, if not all, ASUS boards. See, CSM, this is disabled for basically every ASUS board that I have had for a long time now. And it means that you cannot boot up on legacy devices. So if you installed Windows Legacy boot on another motherboard, it will not boot on here unless you actually enable this, and you have to do that. But Windows is installed in UEFI mode here, so that's fine. And yeah, Windows Boot Manager, that's because it's UEFI, so that's fine now. I actually had a bunch of problems with this in the past. I could not for the life of me figure this out, but yeah, here it is, CSM. I think the other, most, if not all of the other motherboard windows actually set this to enable, and I don't think they're calling it CSM, they're calling it something else. So this is what confused me back in the day. Boot configuration, yeah, this is very normal stuff that I don't really care about. Tool, so we can upgrade the BIOS in the flash utility. You can do it on the internet or storage devices. I don't have any storage devices, but it does see the attached hard drive, so you can actually put it on the root of it and then choose your BIOS file right here and update from the hard drive. Yeah, let's leave that. Secure erase. You can erase your SSD or your hard drive securely. So this is wiping it with a bunch of ones and zeros. I don't really know why you would do this in BIOS. Maybe you have a drive that you want to install Windows on, so you want to erase it first, but that's the only thing I can imagine. You can animate the picture, I believe. I don't need that. I think it's disabled on default. User profile, you can have various profiles for overclocking and just basic stuff. SPD, you can see the speed of the memory, what different timings and voltages the different XMPs run at. And funnily here, we actually see that XMP number 2 is blank, but choosing XMP 2 gives me 3600 megahertz on on the timings that we see on XMP1 as well. Yeah. Armory crate. I don't know. I don't use this. Maybe. I don't know. I never use this. Graphics card. Yeah. Oh, here we can set the bus interface. Okay, we can't. I don't know. I think this is GPU post. Yeah, so it's seeing my GPU running at x16, but I can't choose it. So you should be able to choose your GPU here and look at like which GPU it is and stuff like that. But apparently this one is not supported or something. So you can load, optimize default, save and exit. Yeah, not much else to do it to say about it. So that's actually the BIOS. Let me just DIMM slot number. Okay, sure. So that was just the Maximus 11 Apex BIOS run through, and if you do want to run daily. Yeah, I also gave a bunch of pointers for that. I don't want to be repeating myself, but now let's just boot up on 5.4 gigahertz at 4 gigahertz memory, just to see that this is actually stable. But I did see it said 3.6 gigahertz in the BIOS. I don't understand why. So let's just validate that it's actually running 5.4. Yep. Oh. It is running 5.4, and in here you can see the 2000 megahertz and the 5000 megahertz here. It says NB for North Bridge, but we don't really have North and South Bridge anymore, because the South Bridge was implemented into the CPU, but the 5000 megahertz here is the cache frequency. So yeah, yeah, 5.4 gigahertz, decent. I think I can push. I think I booted up at 5.6 with this cooler, but we really need more cold because we do run into plus temperatures. I do have the GT here. It does not display all the cores, but it's fine to just look at like this. Yeah, of course it doesn't go below 0. But when I have this open and I run Cinebench, I do see that it gets to be like 10-15 degrees or something. So it's not the best phase changer cooler that I have, but it's decent enough. I haven't tested if 5.6 is stable. I don't really want to test that because we're going into frequencies that are not really achievable on daily systems. Maybe 5.4 is kind of up there, but some systems can run it on water cooling, so that should be okay. Anyway, that is it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.